I probably cheated on you to some extent in this series because in the latter part of this month I am to make a lecture contribution in Vancouver to the 150th anniversary celebration of the Theosophical Society, which pleases me very greatly, although I might as well throw in with that right away things that don't please me so much. You know, there are more than 100 people from India who are coming to that meeting. And what do we have? About 20 people from the United States so far. So you can draw your conclusions from that. In any event, I have never been to India. I have no particular connections with India. I am not a yogi bear, you know, and things like that. But let us say that is of some interest. But nevertheless, we have over 400 people who have registered for the 3-day meeting. So it should be of some interest. Now, when contemplating the subject which I was free to choose of my contribution to the what would it be now? It's not the 300th anniversary yet, but it is the 150th anniversary. Yeah. I have a book that I always cherished, which is called the Golden Book of the Theosophical Society, which was issued at the 50th anniversary. It's full of pictures in bad photography. But in any event, so that was 100 years ago, so I'm going to guard that book even more. In any event, I think this is a significant date of remembrance, and also a time when those who have been attracted to this particular philosophy or this manifestation of the esoteric tradition may cherish and may find hopefully some inspiration in. Now, that being the case, I'll jump back to my early days in the Theosophical Society, many of which were spent in this very house and in this very room in the 1950s when I got here, and when, like a great devotee, I brought with me, I didn't even have to buy them here, I brought with me from Austria a complete set of the Secret Doctrine, various other writings, H.P. Blavatsky, both in German and in English, and so I was not entirely, or even less than entirely, a newcomer. Now, if I were to look back and describe some of my state of mind and my experiences of that time, which would have been beginning with the early 50s and going on through the 70s, 80s, and so forth, I would say that it was a combination of delight and also a measure of slight disappointment. Not that the delight is easy to come by, sometimes it isn't, because in that case, you know, we had more than 100 members of the Theosophical Society in this lodge, who for a large portion of which were here every members' meeting. So we had quite a bunch. Many of these were people going back to Dr. Annie Besant's day. There was only one gentleman, the late Mr. Moran, an Irishman, if there ever was one, an Irish lawyer who was often repeating the statement where if I had only known where to look, I could have seen H.P. Blavatsky in England, because I was there when she was there. But this way I think I only had to communicate with her by other means. In any event, you know, it was still a time when the founders and the almost founders of the Theosophical movement were still here. And that was quite interesting, because whatever else you may say here and there about them, and I'm sure people do, they were very interesting people. So I would say if I had just come to America to meet a lot of interesting people, I've succeeded. I was really happy that way. Now, in the midst of all of that, here I was, because you know I had to work to earn my bread and so forth, and therefore my time was limited. That almost every night for hours I was reading the Secret Doctrine, which I have certainly seen less interesting literature than that. But let us say as that went on, and as I was, not that there is all that much in my opinion, to really profoundly digest in the Secret Doctrine. Now, I hope I'm not insulting Madame Blavatsky by saying that, but let's say you read it once, you read it. So I wasn't ever disappointed in theosophical materials, but there were times when I was somewhat puzzled. And some of that puzzling extended to the fact that whenever I read the Secret Doctrine, any volume or all three, at that time it was issued in 3 volumes, or even in more. Anyway, I came to discover that interesting and fascinating in a sort of novelistic fashion, though much of the content of these volumes was, that it somehow left always a little bit empty. There was always something missing. And I said, well, I don't think I ever read a book that did not leave something missing. Why should this one be different? And so as time went on, I met a very charming gentleman who was one of the members of this lodge and who was English by derivation, a man by the name of Will Ross. He was a naval engineer by profession, and he was working for the U.S. Navy to fix up the harbor of Los Angeles and of San Diego. He was a very interesting man. And so we had a lot of, initially I argued with him like all head-getters, because I was generally doing that. You know, I was arguing with all of these older and wiser people and told them, listen, look, you haven't looked at this, you haven't looked at that. And I sort of got the reputation of a pretty argumentative young fellow. I was, for many years, I was the youngest of the lot. In any event, this particular gentleman didn't mind my young tendencies, and after many conversations ended up telling me, you know, you are sensing something that I have sensed for years. And what is that? Will was his name, Will Ross. He said, well, what it is that there's something missing. And I said, Well, I would say that that's a judgment that can be rendered over so many things in this world, because almost everything in this world and everybody in this world got at least something missing. And he said, oh yes, most definitely. He was a very enterprising and fine gentleman. So I had conversations with him, and the one that I remember, there were various radio programs being played at that time. The radio was the big, with me it still is, because I don't like television, and I like the computer even less. And the people who appear on these media, I like absolutely not. It occurred to me that definitely this was worth discussing. And I know with our many conversations that one thing that Mr. Ross, who was probably three times my age, said to me, you know, what we need is a theosophical mysticism. He says what we got is not profound enough, it's not mystical enough, and consequently does not really satisfy most of the people who come to us. So he said to me, if in the future you have an opportunity to rectify this situation, you should do so. I said, oh yes, I definitely will. And then I became even more familiar with him, because his wife, who was a worker in Wheaton, Illinois, by the name of Caroline Tess, I have a little hard time about this, because I became very friendly with her. She had a massive stroke on the grounds of the Wheaton headquarters, and she never got out of bed again. But we brought her up here to Ojai, and so I visited her numerous times, and she became a great devotee, especially of the Gnostic Gospel of Philip. I brought her a copy, and then after a while I saw that she did to the books what I do to mine, and that they were falling apart, so then I had to bring her another one. Anyway, that was Mrs. Ross. And Mr. Ross, Will Ross, was the proverbial wonderful husband. I mean, this man who had no medical experience whatsoever took such good care of this invalid wife that it was a joy to see. In any event, I always kept that in mind, and we discussed that to some extent. In fact, not that that is such a great revelation, but I was told at that time when we spoke that Mr. Ross applied the term theosophical mysticism to very largely to the radio program that Mr. Manly Hall from the Philosophical Research Society was playing, I think on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and that he felt that was as close to a theosophical mysticism as one could get. And so I started listening to them. I went to listen to Manly Hall in person practically every Sunday, but I didn't listen to him on the radio. It was below me. In any event, I began to discern, I think, what maybe Mr. Ross and others were talking about. Namely, that when you allow your various psychological functions, as Jung would call them, or you may call them whatever you wish, to catch on to certain phrases, to certain legends that are being put forth. And if these begin to do something to you, then you are actually practicing a theosophical mysticism. You are not practicing Christian mysticism, because then you would be reading one of the great mystics there. You are not practicing a Sufi mysticism. You are practicing a mysticism that is of, at least in large part, of its theosophical stimulus. Now, this has helped me considerably in ensuing years. And so, as the years went off, and I went off, and I traveled in behalf of the Theosophical Society to all kinds of places, from Sweden to New Zealand, and all kinds of others. I came to the conclusion that this curious and not overwhelmingly large, or just not overwhelming lack, was all over the world. In other words, the presentation of theosophical material as largely based on, derived from the Secret Doctrine and some of the other lesser works of Blavatsky and the many by Besant and so forth, were not complete. There was something missing. And this didn't bother me much, because I would say that, my living quarters were full of books at that time, even as they are now. So I was reading all the time. Well, of course, if you read books, something is going to be missing. So what's the difference? Obviously it is. But eventually I came to the conclusion that what was missing or faulty was of some significance, some great significance. And that if in some way in the course of my weird campaign I could come close to that missing element, then I would gain a great deal. And so I kept looking for it. So now, as time went on, the decades went on, because I have been a long, long time member of the Theosophical Society. After all, I'm 93 years old, and I started when I was about from 16 to 25, So, all right, maybe I'll find out what this missing situation is. And as time went on, and as I bought more and more books and read more and more of them into the wee hours of the morning, I came to a conclusion which I still hold, although certainly with the years I have added to it. And this conclusion is this: that the Secret Doctrine, other writings of H.P. Blavatsky, the many, many commentary-type writings by Annie Besant, who I think was a fabulous orator and a fabulous writer, and so forth, what they are lacking is what could be sort of called the spiritual new volume of the teaching. And this spiritual new volume has to do with the fact that once you have absorbed the message of the Secret Doctrine and various other books and commentaries, once you have absorbed these, then this process of absorption calls out for something more. And then sort of I could hear the voices in my bedroom while reading the Secret Doctrine, and then what, and then what, and then what. Now, of course, the response to that, given by a lot of wonderful people whom you would refer to as students, was always, well, isn't there enough there for you, fellow? What do you mean, then what? And certainly there is a tremendous amount of material, but the nature of the material and what the material points to is the issue. So that I came after many decades and traveling over the world, lecturing for the Theosophical and Society, and I came to the conclusion that the difficulty lies in something like this, and obviously any analysis of this sort is bound to be in itself inadequate. But the analysis is to the effect that what is contained in the Secret Doctrine, and to some extent already in Isis Unveiled, because Isis Unveiled is the fun book of Blavatsky. If you read that without alternately having goosebumps and laughter, fits of laughter, then your reading is right. That's how you should read Isis Unveiled. But let's see, Secret Doctrine is something else. So when you add the sum total of these together, then at least I came to the conclusion that all that we have been presented in this wonderful literature is theory. Theory, Theory, bang, bang, bang. In any event, that this theory can be and is ultimately intended to be utilized in a manner of practice whereby the source, the source material, the heart, the kernel of these particular revelations can be discerned and utilized. In other words, there's some more material there that if we knew how to get hold of it, if we knew how to utilize it, would take us to the kind of experience that lurks behind the curtain of the Secret Doctrine and of Isis Unveiled and others. That is, Bastian says, this is the source from whence all of these wonderful stories have come. Now, of course, this is not easy. People are not easy to convince of that. And partially, the case for that is that when you read this fabulous imaginative literature, I mean, I'm also a pretty good reader of science fiction and things like that, but I have never read or was fed a imaginative material more fascinating, more complex, and more wonderful than the one in the Secret Doctrine. But the question still arises, here is this wonderful material, what am I to do with it? And I discussed this over the years with people like Joy Mills, who was a great student of the Secret Doctrine, many others, and a statement was always made, somewhere there is some missing material. Somewhere there is a key, and that key would supply what you are looking for. If you are looking for your searched goods in the already published materials, you are going to find very little. These were the very words that Miss Mills, who had a great career in Theosophical Society, said to me when I said, well, yes, Joy, if I find it, I'm going to think of you. And I did, too. So what we need to keep in mind is in certain ways very simple. And the old Greeks who knew everything, the old Greeks knew it already, because they are our spiritual grandfathers, as Harold Bloom has put it out. If you don't acknowledge Harold Bloom as your intellectual and spiritual grandfather because of his studies of Greece, then you don't know anything. And that is probably quite true. In any event, what we have here is embodied in one sentence, if we look at it in some depth, which is the great introductory sentence of the Eleusinian Mysteries, which says that there is theoria and there is practice, or even the mysterium. So every kind of disclosure of an important nature in this world, particularly of a spiritual intent and content, has to have a theoretical and intellectual background. But it also has to have a spiritual program in it, which takes you beyond the intellectual background. If you don't have both, well, keep on working and maybe you'll find it. But this, I think, was a most valuable disclosure. So what we need to keep in mind, let's take something else that is maybe more well known to people in the culture, although nowadays hardly anything but balderdash is well known, and see how that would apply. When you are trying to disclose an intellectual and spiritual content, something that speaks to the deepest regions of your own interior being, and trying to utilize that for your own spiritual purposes, then you are using the available literature correctly. For instance, what do people do with the Arthurian myths? And they're about as numerous as the Secret Doctrine, to be sure. What you are doing with the Arthurian myth, there you are presented with a story. You are presented with a myth. And as you are presented with that myth, you begin, if your head is in the right place and your heart is in an even better place, you will begin to utilize the myth in an interior fashion. I'm not going to, I have spoken here on the Arthurian myths often, and for instance, if you have if you develop a spiritual linkage between your innermost self and King Arthur, then you're on the right track, because you have found the spiritual content that this myth is trying to convey to you, which is in part what is happening here is not happening 1,000 years ago on the British Isles. It's not happening someplace else. It's not happening in the Himalayas, because what's happening there is the Dalai Lama is being kicked out and things like that by nasty people. But what is happening is that something that you have studied has put a seed into your inner nature. And if you cultivate this seed, it's going to grow not only into a mighty tree, but into a mighty forest, a spiritual forest, which will abound to your ultimate and very great spiritual benefit. So, these books are not here to make us learn. I don't think that my academic career has been fascinated about reading about Lemuria, the land of the lemur monkeys. That's where the name comes from. The lemur monkeys, which are fairly well scattered in certain parts of the world, certain species of long-tailed monkeys, quite cute ones. I always liked monkeys. Then you can draw conclusions from this. What in my life, what in my experience, what in my family, even what in my lineage. I come from a country where at least the people of my kind have always looked at what their ancestors did. And in some cases that came in very handy. So in any event, when this takes place, when the myth is internalized, what's happening then? What is happening is precisely what's happened, only in a more dramatic way. In the Eleusinian mysteries, in the Orphic mysteries, in all of these. Why? Because you were presented with a certain theoretical framework, and then you were presented with a drama, which ultimately really is within yourself. And when you saw that, then you said, oh, aha. So Persephone wasn't really, I'm always captured by puns. So Persephone wasn't phony. In any event, there it is. There it is. If we can begin to experience this, if we can feel it, instead of just thinking about it or reading it, then maybe we are going to come to what Paul Harvey used to call on the radio the end of the story. And the end of the story, interestingly enough, is not out there. The end of the story is not in Washington, D.C. It better not be. And the end of the story is not anywhere, but the end of the story is where there is the beginning of something else. And that end and beginning, that Alpha and Omega, is right here. Right here. Not in the physical rib cage to which I point, and which is nothing to point at anymore in my age, but let's say it is locked up in this strange prison, which we call the body, which in turn is locked up in a larger prison, which we call the world. And from there we can go to an even larger prison, which is the solar system and so on. You can go on with Giordano Bruno, but whatever you do, remember that there is more, that there is more. It doesn't end with Atlantis, it doesn't end with Lemuria, it doesn't end with with our pudding bag ancestors, which I'm particularly liked in the Secret Doctrine, you know, they sort of a prehistoric humanity, nice science fiction material, where, you know, Blavatsky says that these were our ancestors. They're ugly looking buggers, if you don't mind the British proverb, and they are, he said that they look like a pudding bag. Well, I tell you what, my genealogical studies, especially involving my family, are a little bit more beautiful, a little bit more promising, a little bit nice than going back to pudding bags. But in any event, what it is, this is what Joy Mills pointed out several times toward her. The Secret Doctrine is a myth. It's not history. It's not anybody's story. But it is a myth that points toward greater realities. And if you allow these greater realities to penetrate your own nature, then it will lead you to very good places. But it is designed to do that and not something else. So when many decades after these incidents, that I mean, you come up with the realization, as I think I did, that there's still something to be done here. That reading this book is not enough, but that somehow internalizing its outwardly hidden content, somehow bringing that strange esoteric current into yourself, and then begin to feel a movement, begin to feel an exaltation, begin to feel an insight, then you are moving in the right direction. Now, as a general principle, I think most of us can agree to that. But what we may need to also take into account, that this possibility of another step, this likelihood of a movement into other and greater depths, the movement of our consciousness into recognitions which we did not have before and which somehow have been triggered, somehow have been stimulated inside of our being by reading these books, by thinking about them, and so forth. Because this has been the purpose of the myth in every age. If you read Joseph Campbell, our own countryman, who was probably one of the greatest mythologists, or Mircea Eliade, the great Romanian mythologist, sometimes hidden between their words and sometimes not hidden, it is there that, come on, this is the way, this is leading you somewhere. This is a way to extract from you something really great. This is the way in which you will get hold of the Holy Grail, if you will get hold of it at all. But instead of that, we are prosaic beings. You know, we go to the grocery store, and I better not mention the particular groceries that I'll be talking about, because I'm not a vegetarian. But let's say when we go to grocery stores and so forth, if we discover something that is, if we take this home and cook it, you know, this is really going to make me feel good. This is really going to give me another jump in this life. And it's really true, because I don't believe that food is our best medicine, but I do believe that food is part of the best medicine of this world, and the best medicine of this world is the myth, is the story, which has come out of eternity. It has come out of the eternal reality of the universe, and has made itself into a story, and stands in front of you and says, "Are you going to listen to me? Are you going to read me? Are you going to utilize what I have to tell you? Or like all the other dumbbells, you are going to go and turn on your computer?" That's the great revelation of our age. Now, I don't mean that you can't turn on your computer, but when the physical begins to replace the potential spiritual, and somewhere along the line we made a great big mistake. And we should recognize that. Because our great difficulties in this world are mostly consist of mistakes. If Christianity, early Christianity, first 2, 3, 4 centuries had not made certain mistakes, we would have a much more transformative, a much more insight-producing, a much more actually salvific result that we could take from our religion. And I don't have to tell you, and nobody else should tell you that you wouldn't be here if that were the case. We still feel in our spiritual natures the lack, the deficiency in the spiritual teachings of our culture. And among these, even the most esoteric and the most informative, and in my ways the most exciting, which came to be called in 1875 Theosophy. So let's keep that in mind, that we can penetrate depths of meaning which are present in the myth, that the Secret Doctrine is, that Isis Unveiled is, at the others. All we have to do is look for it. Look for it maybe in a different way, because this is such a different time to the Eleusinian mysteries and so. But if we look for it in depth, something will come up. Something will pop up and say, "This you must know. This is the meaning, and you better not forget it. You better not forget it." And some of us, maybe in other words, maybe in other languages, have experienced that. And not only have we experienced it, but we haven't forgotten it. And whether I give my internal being back to eternity soon or later, I can say that I have known the truth. And the truth has made me so much freer than I was. And that since I am human, and you are human, and Joe Blow on the street is human, they can do it as well. This is not a matter of intellectual teaching, and this is where I think that a lot of theosophical interest has gone wrong and is still going wrong. Now then, there are so many things to say, and so little time to say it. So let's jump from that to maybe a particular application of this principle. We are predestined to go beyond belief and beyond teaching. And how does that predestination come about? Because we have done it for thousands of years, and look what it has done for us. It has done nothing for us. Nothing. We believed in Osiris, we believed in Bacchus, we believed in this, that, and other god, and here we can still see, here as Goethe puts it in the Faust, here I stand a poor fool. Hier bin ich armer Tor, and I am not smarter than before. Because somehow we have not gotten to what Madame Blavatsky calls the essence. It's a very important thing. When she refers to the divine being, the Christ in us, the hope of glory, as St. Paul called it, she refers to it as an essence. Now, that's not a culinary expression in this case, but it is a spiritual expression. Essentia in Latin means that which is beyond a particular thing, something that is deeply within, something that is hidden. And if we don't know this, and if we don't learn this, then we haven't known or learned anything. That such an essence dwells in us, and that whatever is good, whatever is pleasant, whatever is loving and kind and insightful, that we may have had the privilege of manifesting in this world, came from that essence. That is the essence of the Secret Doctrine. That is the essence of Theosophy. Now from that we can deduce that as time goes on, we may be able to connect to a greater and to a more efficient degree with that essence. It doesn't have to remain a theoretical construct for us. But we can. It's not that difficult. When you walk down the street and you see some little dirty-faced children fighting each other, and this and that, and you try to tell them, hey there, Johnny, don't do that. It's not going to do you any good. When you see the inadequacies and the pain and the difficulties and the sorrow and the spiritual poverty, which is the only poverty worth considering, when we see these and we begin to recognize, oh yes. If I look at this with that famed third eye, if I look at this with an interior organ of perception, which means something that I not only look, I not only intuit, I not only think, but I feel in a very, very deep sense. And here is the great problem. We have allowed, and I'm going to be crucified in Wheaton, Illinois for this. We have allowed our theosophy, our occultism, our esoteric tradition, we have allowed it to become an external or superficial thing. Something that, oh yes, reincarnation, yes, karma, yes, masters, yes, and all of that. And when you got them all ingested, what have you got? Nothing! Nothing. Why? Because you haven't felt it. You haven't allowed it to get into your essence, as Blavatsky did. If Blavatsky hadn't had this essence within her, then nothing would have happened. And so this is the important thing. The great trouble with our occultism since the 19th century has been that it has not considered the feeling-toned element, which is necessary for what? Well, I don't know if I really can tell you, but it's necessary for the bringing forth, for the stimulation, for the bringing into consciousness of that which was here all along and which needs to be brought to consciousness. Just look at it, all the teachings, reincarnation and all that, oh yeah? Well, let's say, if you had not thought of your reincarnations this morning when you woke up and then went about your business, have you really impoverished yourself? Are you somehow less now because you haven't thought of your incarnation? No. But if what has been said and written about your past incarnation, or the mysteries of karma, if these things stirred something within you, if they tickled an essence inside of you that said, you know, this might be true, this might be right, why don't we look at this, why don't we look at it in a deeper way, and why don't we look at it with our heart as well as with our head. Now, you know, again, we should not deprecate our seniors, many of whom I knew and many of whom I revered greatly. I will never forget people like Geoffrey Hudson, like Rukmini Devi, many of the other old-timers, because, you know, whatever you can say, these people lived what they believed. And they believed to a very great extent what they knew. So knowing, believing, and doing what you know and believe, when these things come together, then you have marvelous things. But it has to be there, and it's just not something that you read in a book. Oh, this means that I probably was, I don't know, I probably was the great gorilla in the Philippine Islands 200 years ago, and so on. So, well, if you were, then you are going to teach us some monkey business, you know. No, it's not. But you have to feel these things. When I read about Atlantis, of course I have read as a little kid already about some other sunken cities and so forth, especially the northern German sunken city of Vineta, which is a beautiful and tragic story. And then I said, oh yes, I know what you're talking about. You know, I have been in the sunken city. Not only that, my friend, but I am a sunken city. I am under the cosmic waters of nothingness. But you know what? If I have got something to say about it, I am not going to stay there. I'm going to come out into the light. I'm going to come out under the light of the stars, and then I may even get really closer to that essence that was myself. So we have gone a little bit wrong in many respects. We have preferred the intellectual concepts, the dogmas like reincarnation and karma, the romantic imagery of masters and things like that. We have preferred that for the experience of the real. When you experience the real, there's not too many things I can assure you. I'm not that smart. But I can tell you this much: if you experience the real, you will know the real whenever you encounter it. If you have heard about the real, if you read about the real, if you recited the real, then the chances are that you are still, like Goethe said, im jener Tor, I'm like that fool who is here and knows less than he knew before. Why? I said, this is probably more important than it appears. If you believe in what you have been told and don't experience anything with it, then you have engaged in a great exercise of inutility, of uselessness, because what you don't know will not enter you. What you don't know is not going to speak to your essence. But there are other elements here, and that is why, and I think we can still look at a little bit that way, that is why Blavatsky was a precursor of modern psychology. And we have to give her credit for that. And in fact, if you look at a great deal of the typology and various other psychological principles of the functions of the psyche in Jungian psychology, you find that they are the copies in other ways, expressed in other words, but identical with those that Blavatsky. One of the things that always strikes everyone who starts reading Blavatsky, well, what the heck is she doing here? You know, she has all of these principles. There is a physical principle, there is an emotional principle, there is a mental principle, there is a higher mental principle, and then maybe one or two more, because she was trying to bring to the fore with that notion, you know, that there is more than one self within you. There is more than one series of possibilities and abilities. And then time comes along, and time comes a hefty man from Zurich in Switzerland by the name of Carl Gustav Jung, and he put forth that, yes, if you know these things, then you have known the various portions of yourself, that there is a physical self of yourself, that there is an emotional self of yourself, that there is an intellectual self of yourself, and an intuitive and transcendental self beyond that, that points into eternity. They are not more and not less than Blavatsky's 7 principles. And she was right, because she indicated that unless we sort of take these various steps, all right, so I had a physical experience, now I'm going to have an emotional experience, an etheric experience, emotional experience, mental experience, higher mental experience, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I keep on going, you know what? I might actually get somewhere, which it seems did not occur to me very often, to my great regret, in this lifetime. So that the psychological functions that Jung came forth with are another dress of Blavatsky's 7 principles. But once again, we need to remember that we are composed of many beings. We are not a completely unitary being, and as we step from one level to another, the profundity of our experience, the profundity of our thinking, the profundity of our feeling, will all become deeper. But we have to allow it to happen. So these are the reasons why Blavatsky had in her various writings the emphasis on the 7 principles. 7 principles of nature, 7 principles of the individual. We are a multi-tiered being, and if we allow ourselves to experience these various steps, these various stages, then the next thing that happens is something that the Greeks call gnosis. Then you no longer believe, you no longer are repeating information, but you know. You know, you know. And this dear old, it wasn't even that old, at the 60s, you know, Russian lady who brought this forth was trying to tell us this. And she was also telling us, you know, I have more to tell you. And what is that more? That more is that if you do this right, if you not only listen to me, but if you translate what I'm telling you into an interior experience, then that essence that is within you will awaken, will move higher, and all of a sudden you will feel and see differently. The experience of the higher self of another person is not only not impossible, but it is quite possible if we devote our attention to it. If we first realize that it's possible, and then we do something about it. I know we are not supposed to push personal experience here much, but let us say on two different occasions I had what I believe was the experience of the higher self, of what the magicians call the holy guardian angel of someone else. And it was they were experiences that I never forgot. And not only never forgot, but that I felt obliged to follow, even against much difficulty, even against much disappointment, even much sorrow. Why? Because when you have experienced something, then you know. Up to that time, you believe. And wasn't that the difference between Gnostics and agnostics, who don't know? One said, yes, I know. The agnostic, no, he doesn't know. So, you know, these things are important. And so now, why did I bring this up? Well, if I can remember why I brought it up, then maybe I can tell you a little bit about it. Yeah. And I brought it up because I have come to the conclusion that what happens after the Secret Doctrine, what happens after the doctrinal Theosophy, is a beginning of a series of experiences, which are the experience ultimately of the higher world, of the higher self, of what the magicians came to call the holy guardian angel, which is what? The same that St. Paul speaks about Corinthians. I'm not a big Bible thumper, so I will quote the wrong scripture, but you know that there is something within us, the Christ in us, the hope of glory, a coming of the future, an interior redeemer, a being, a possibility that is capable of doing what Christ in Albert Dürer's famous Easter painting is so beautifully reprinted. If you are not familiar with it, you should. It is the time of what Jesus does between the time of the crucifixion and the resurrection. So he's hauling the lost souls out of the inferno. And he's kneeling by a kind of a big hole, and he's bringing them out, hauling them out one after the other. So you see, we have that kind of faculty within ourselves too. Because inside of us are hellish regions of forgotten and unnecessary balderdash, which doesn't belong there, which can be brought forth, which is not only useless, but is counterproductive. And if we reach into that deep hole, and there come the hands of our past selves, the hands of our past knowledge, and we bring them up and pull them up and say, now you are here, now you are part of me, and now we can do things together. That is Gnosis. That is Theosophy. But of course, depending on the circumstances, that is not very easy to communicate. Because the most frequent response that you get to some of these statements of these churches, what the hell are you talking about? You know? But some of us know what we are talking about. We have not only been told, but we have experienced. And one of these is H.P. Blavatsky. So when the reading, when the study, when the looking into the 7 principles and the astral plane and all of these things are accomplished, something happens. Something happens. Something begins to speak, a voiceless voice within you saying that, I know who you are, I am you, the deeper you, and if you stay in touch with me, I will take you to experiences, to marvels, to glory, to understanding, to gnosis that you have never experienced before. It has happened before, it is happening now, and it will happen again. So when the study of the Secret Doctrine, of the various Blavatskyan teachings is over, then look up or look around, and maybe there comes a spiritual hand which was, come on, come further. You have come this far, you can go further, you can ultimately come to the ultimate, to me, to me, to me. And when that happens in one way or the other, then the great climb beyond this world, the climb on the stair to heaven, what were called in the Middle Ages, by the alchemist, the l'escalier des arts, the steps, the stairway of the sages will come to you, and you will have come to a point where possibly, in a mysterious ignorance you have always been, but which you have now recovered and discovered. Gerald Heard, the British philosopher whom I greatly revered at one time and whose books I still have, said that the human is the only unfinished animal in this world. Now, you say, oh, that's a great saying. What does it mean? It means that you are one of the unfinished animals, and you can finish, you can make it. And people like the Blavatskys and others of a similar kind, the sages, the mystics, the holy ones, have done that, are doing that. And they did it not only for themselves, but they did it for you. And as they reach out into this dark hole and pulling you up and pulling you out, the light within bursts forth through your nature. And you are now, again, what you were intended to be. Now this is something that still needs to be done. This is something that will not happen by you learning about reincarnation. This will not happen if you go through all the convolutions of karma. This will happen when, along with any other informative material, you have opened up a secret place within you. That secret place that in later Christianity has been approximated by the Sacred Heart of Jesus or the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Those hearts are inside of you. You are them. And if you feel what needs to be felt, if you reach out to grasp that hand that is reaching for you in this darkened world, then everything will be fine, everything will be great. And being thus great, you will have experienced the ineffable greatness that the ancients experienced and that others have experienced and that Blavatsky wanted to show us. So, thanks to all of those who have brought us to the verge of eternity, and thanks for the future that they will bring to us beyond the border of eternity. For here we are, folks, we are the pilgrims of eternity, walking along the stars. And if we can realize that that is what we are, then that walk will be successful, that walk will be glorious, will be rewarding, and will in every way be marvelous. And those who have contributed to bringing us to such experiences will be revered forever. I hope that that is enough for this evening's recognitions, and we still have one evening prior to the big meeting, and these are sort of little mini rehearsals. After all, we live in a theatrical city. We are in the building where the first talking movie was projected. The projection booth was right over there. And so, we are a theatrical people. And why not? Out of the theater grows the reality. Out of the theater grows the transcendent function. Out of the theater grows the glory that we are and that we shall experience. So I thank you very much, and there'll still be another one in this series next week.